What is happening, folks? Welcome to another episode, NineNerdYards. Welcome, nerds. We love you. We thank you, all of Nerd Nation out there. Hopefully, y'all are having a great and wonderful and fantastic day. We have a surprise guest with us today. You know her, you love her. You have probably seen her work in a number of things. I just found out she did the movie The Invitation. We broke down Dave. She's done a number of shows. I'm happy to hear all about her travels and everything that she's done in the production world. It is Almitra Corey. Almitra, how you doing?
Hey guys, I'm good. How are you?
We're a lot better now that you're here because we have a lot of questions. Yeah.
So many questions.
Almitra, okay, first of all, for people that don't know, like I'm not all like tied into the Hollywood scene. What is a production designer exactly? What do they do?
Well, the short answer that I usually give people is that I'm the head of the art department. So that oversees sort of everything on screen, everything on camera that's not an actor. But even then, sometimes I weigh in on things like, color palette of costumes and hair and makeup and things like that. But anything you see on screen that's not a person is under my purview.
Whoa. Okay. So does this doesn't only include like wardrobe. This can include like plants or like couch colors or like wallpapers and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Literally anything that you see on your screen.
So,
if we're in a park, it's like I'm picking the right corner of the park with the right kind of greenery, and if it doesn't exist, I bring in my own greens to make it the right season, that kind of stuff.
So just a small amount of the show.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Nothing big.
I was gonna say, Producer T often brings in his own greens. I don't know if it's the same greens as you, but he does this from time to time. So,
I did do season 1 of High Maintenance.
Yeah, it might have been the same kind of greens. All right.
I remember the first time I actually watched that show. I was staying at my friend's place in New York, and we just had that was before it was legal. We had to like call somebody, and then they would show up to your house with a case, just like in the show. And I was like, oh wow, look, we're watching what we're doing on TV.
we did our research.
Art imitating life.
Yeah, it was very, very accurate.
Okay, before we get to I'm sure we have a whole bunch of Dave questions, but Almitra, how did you get started in this? Were you just so good as a little kid designing stuff? They were like, we need her. Did you think in kindergarten, like did Almitra in kindergarten be like, I'm going to do production design? Where does this all start from?
Well, I mean, I think in retrospect, yes, but it took me a pretty long, windy road to get. Well, not pretty long, but I was in my like late 20s before I figured out like that this was what I wanted to do. But I knew I wanted to do something involving art and film and television and environments. But I was more interested in making art. I got a degree in sculpture, and I really wanted to be a curator. I wanted to like curate the space. But then I moved to New York and worked in the art world and realized that was really not my vibe, and accidentally ended up through a friend of a friend working in production on something short-term in the accounting department. And that was kind of my accidental foot in the door. And I worked in accounting for about a year and a half and kind of learned sort of the whole big picture of how productions work, which was really like going to film school. Like I was planning to go to grad school, and then instead I moved to New York to kind of feel things out for a year or so. And in that time I got this job, and I was like, I can get paid to learn how to make television in this kind of weird and specific way, but it worked. And then I got a job in the art department from some folks I had worked with when I was in accounting, and sort of moved my way up that way.
Wow.
And that was a long time ago. That was like almost 20 years ago, like 18 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Whoa. And then you've just been on a trail burn ever since. Like you've just been doing all the things.
I've been moving around. I've been doing some things.
Shaking and baking? Yeah.
I was
making
on
things
the
happen.
East Coast. Yeah. That was in New York, like I said. And then after about 8 years there, I decided to move out to LA because I'd never lived on the West Coast. I'm from the East Coast originally. And I've been out there for about 13 years. And then I just this month moved back to Virginia.
Yay! That's not a bad play. I feel like that's like such a reverse Uno card from like probably like New York and like LA. Like you're just like, I'm chilling and I'm in a house and like I'm just chilling in the woods and stuff.
Just enjoying my life.
I don't know. I think of Virginia, I think of woods. There's probably more, but like probably not. I don't know.
But they're right outside of my windows are just giant trees. So and that is the selling point of this house. And it's what got me to move back here for sure.
I've seen a TikTok, so I thought that my ideas were pretty accurate, is all I'm saying. So.
Well, it turns out they are, bud.
For sure. Jeff, let's see what you got, man.
So just gonna jump into it. We've spoken with another production designer previously, Sarah K. White, who we had such a fun time. She was so amazing, and we learned so many things I never would have thought of. And one of the things that was really interesting for me that she brought up was the challenges you can face because of like, so you have to worry about lawsuits in the ways of like design.
I knew you were going to ask me that.
It was the most interesting thing. So Blake, like
I wasn't here for this talk, obviously. So we're both learning something on each other.
So one of the things Sarah brought up was like, even to design on a wallpaper, they have to be careful of. So Almitra, what are some of the more interesting or unique ones that you've had to find a workaround for in that sort of area?
Well, Dave kind of goes down in history with the Disney legal department.
I have so many questions.
And, the saving grace on my end is that legal clearances are sort of ever changing. And with the bigger studios, Disney, which, is the umbrella that owns most of the studios I've been working for the last few years, they have a strong legal department and they have a lot of things that they are okay with as long as we point them out and reference it. And we don't necessarily have to clear every little thing. Like tattoos is a thing that they've actually lightened up on in the past few years.
Okay.
But I know Sarah told the story about the Tyson tattoo that kind of started it all. And so it was like the big thing for many years. And then in the last few years, they've eased up on that. But different studios have different rules and different levels of risk that they're willing to take on that stuff. The ones that they did get their heels in on are always kind of confounding, but then they'll let us use like a really explicit sex toy, or they'll let us
going back to Dave, huh?
create a poster of a famous soft pop star that is featured very prominently in a sex scene.
Yeah.
And they're okay with that.
Are we talking about Drake? Is that the Drake one?
We don't know what you're talking about, Blake. It could be anybody.
But so yeah, there's always really interesting challenges in that way. But then, there's things like if we really want a fabric or a wallpaper or something that won't clear for whatever reason, oftentimes I have the capability to make something in-house that is evocative of whatever that original thought was. Not ripping off, like nobody wants to do that ever. And also that wouldn't be legally cleared, because if they say no to something, you can't then just copy it. You have to make something totally different.
So I wasn't planning on getting into it so soon, but since you brought it up, with Dave and the interesting props that comes along with, we'll just say that specific episode, what is the process for that? Are you shopping for that, or are you making it? Or if you're making it, what kind of conversations are you having with the props department? Or did Blake just get it?
Ripped from the headlines type of situation. And we found it on Amazon and we bought 2 of them. And legal cleared it. My pop master found them and bought them. We did an unboxing video, she and I, and sent it to all the EPs. And some of them were definitely blushing.
Oh man, her Amazon search history must have been messed up after that.
It really, really was. Poor, sweet, incredible Vicky. You would never know it to look at her.
That's sort of smart too, to get somebody else to be like, I'm not putting that in my search history, but you can do it in yours. Like
that's why you have a separate.
That's why I'm the big boss. I don't need to sell you my Amazon.
And it's taken me so long to figure out which product we're talking about because there's just been so many, and I'm just like, I'm not sure.
I mean,
which
it
product
has a title.
It was from the episode, the Hypospadias episode, when he used
okay, yeah. See, I was thinking about the VR one.
No. So, no, Terry, we're talking about the one that spilled out of the shower.
Okay, yeah.
Where's the rest of the body?
What's the rest of the body?
Where's the rest of it?
Hints now, Terry, the Drake poster that may or may not have been referenced while he's watching him have his way with this "fuck me silly" doll.
That's what I was thinking, but I'm still thinking about.
That's right.
I do have a funny small thing about since we're talking about the specialized props of Dave season 1. My mom watches everything I do. Lovely, wonderful Christian woman. She loves Dave. She watched season 1 and she was like, I only have one question. And she texted me this too, which was even funnier. She was like, who made the milking table? That was my mother's only question from the whole season.
I brought this up last night as something I was going to ask today.
No,
Cool. Well, do you want to know the answer?
100%.
So conceptually, his girlfriend hires a TaskRabbit.
Yeah.
Allie hires a TaskRabbit. But in reality, I myself and my art director designed it, and then we had a carpenter make it.
Oh,
That's
I was so
the short answer. Yeah.
I was so hoping
we
you
had to make it
actually hired a
custom.
TaskRabbit. That's amazing.
Union rules, man.
Okay.
Fair enough. Okay, Almitra. Okay, let's start here because we cut into it. No, and that's perfect because we have broken down all 3 seasons of Dave. It's probably one of our favorite shows that we have broken down, and it's only gotten better every single season. And it's been something we've broken down again since like pandemic times, and it's sort of how we all sort of started and got to this point of where we're at. How did you get the phone call for them being like, oh, we want you for the show? And then I think the better follow-up question is like, when you got the phone call, come on set, and every episode is sort of like some sort of comedic twisted thing from Dave Bird's mind. What was it like? Was it like a sort of like you're like, I can be so free right now? How was that experience once you got on set?
Well, I worked on Dave for over 4 years between the pilot and the first episode. The first season and the second season. It was because of the pandemic and everything. It really stretched up. So we ended up having like a very long and fruitful collaboration and working relationship. And I really love everybody on that show. But when they first reached out to me, which at this point was almost 5 years ago, it was through my agent, and I had no idea who Lil Dicky was because I'm a little older, I guess, than that demographic at the time. But I looked him up, and they were like, "Yeah, he's interested in you. He's a big fan of High Maintenance. That's one of his favorite shows, and he liked the work that he did on that show." So that is apparently where the call came from. And then later, Ben Sinclair from High Maintenance ended up coming on to Dave as one of the EPs when we went to for season 2, and he did come on and direct an episode in season 1 too. So it was fun to get to work with him again in a different capacity. But I had no idea who Dave was, but I knew who Greg Mottola was, and I was a big fan of his work. And I got to meet with him, and we had a really lovely lunch, and he was amazing. And I got to like tell him about all of his work that I love, and he was just a really kind and really interesting person that I was excited to work with. And so that's the reason I initially said yes, was because I wanted to work with Greg. And then, I found out Jeff was involved, Jeff Schaefer and Saladin Patterson and all these people. And I was like, I don't know who Dave is. I don't know who Lil Dicky is, but I am really psyched.
I know these
show
folks,
with these people. But then I very quickly became incredibly well acquainted with Dave, and he's a very charming guy, as I'm sure you can tell. And we had a really fun time working together, and we had a little bit of a Richmond connection because that's where I'm from, and he went to college down here. And I watched like his videos, and I told him what my favorite videos and favorite songs were. Like I was like, I don't know who you are, I don't know what any of these things are, but I thought this one was really cool. And then we start scouting, and like everybody on the street stops us everywhere we go, and I'm like, oh, you're kind of famous? I had no fucking idea. Like literally, we'd be scouting any part of town. We'd be super low key. We'd be in the middle of nowhere, or we'd be like at a Starbucks in Burbank, and people like, and this is before season 1 came out. This is before we finished shooting the pilot, and people would stop on the street. And like one time we were walking down the street somewhere, and a mom in a minivan like stopped the car in the middle of the road, reversed, stopped, and was like, "Is that Lil Dicky?" and he was so nice, and like she and like 2 of her kids got out of the car and posed for a photo, and it was like that like every day. So then I sort of started to realize what I'd gotten myself into.
That's hilarious.
I like that you were basically living Dave's come up in season 1 with Dave while preparing for season 1.
Yeah,
that's pretty
it's
interesting.
Not lost on me. It gets really, really meta.
Just a bit.
Go on.
That's hilarious. So again, when you realize the direction that he goes in his music videos and what he was wanting, it just feels like it's very creative. Like that there's not another Dave show, you know what I mean? And a lot of it has to do with everything that's not just the characters. It's not just character driven. It's like, okay, for instance, I'm going to ask this question, and this was a big thing that I noticed. Dave wears a lot of peach in certain, like almost every single episode. Was that your choice, his choice? I want to know.
One of his favorite colors. It's one of his favorite colors. He also really loves mint green. He's very into, especially like later in season 1 and into season 2, especially he wanted to get more into fashion. So the costume designer that came on after the pilot is a really good friend of mine and someone I love working with. And I had recommended her to Dave, and he fell in love with her. And now like she did all 3 seasons. I unfortunately I didn't end up doing season 3, but I did 1 and 2. And Romy, who's incredible, works so closely with Dave with his wardrobe, and we work together on the color palettes. And like Dave is very, very involved, as I'm sure you know, and I'm sure you can tell from watching the show. He has great instincts. He is a collaborative person, but he's like me. He always wants more options. Like that's kind of my motto, is like I like options. But what my job is to like take 50 options, narrow it down to 20, and then narrow that down to 3 to show Dave and say these are the top 3. And the thing that Dave likes to do is like him and Holland consider them like very like seriously, pick the one he feels is right, that I also agree with. Like we pick the same one, and then he calls me later and he's like, I know I picked that one, but can I see the other options? And then I'll show him all other 20, 25 options. He'll look at all of them. We'll spend some time, going back over everything, and then come back around to the first choice. And it happens almost every time. But, that's part of the process. And I get it. It's like, I get it. But that's one of the things that is a little more unique about working on Dave. But it also keeps me on my toes, and it makes me get outside of my like regular options sometimes, because I'm always looking for more stuff. I'm always looking for new stuff. And I mean, I can't fault the man because I love options.
Right.
So speaking of options, which do you prefer working on for production design, TV or film?
Well, personally, I really like having a good balance of both. And I usually work on TV shows that are a little more creatively fulfilling than maybe some, old school traditional TV shows like sitcoms or like procedurals. I usually work on things that are a little more elevated or a little more like filmic, or just have big ideas. So I don't always see a difference as far as the creative goes between the TV shows and the features I do. However, there are fewer cooks in the kitchen typically on the movies I do than on TV, because there's like, not on a lot of the TV shows, there's writers on set that are weighing in on stuff. There's the director, there's the producing director, there's the EP, there's the showrunner, there's the DP, you know, and then some shows there's even more people. Like there's the gaffer weighing in on everything, or like, you know, there's always like a million people at the monitor or like, you know, on the text thread about stuff, and it can be a lot of noise sometimes when you're trying to design a show and you're trying to design all 10 episodes or whatever, and we're you know, I've already moved on to the next thing, and I'm getting all this input on the thing that we're shooting now. So that doesn't happen as frequently on features. There's a little more creative autonomy oftentimes, and there's usually a more clear and direct collaboration between like myself and the director and maybe one producer. It's not as many people and it's not as many ideas. It's not even the people, it's the different ideas, obviously.
Right.
So in theory, you know, really love doing movies for that reason, but I love doing TV too. Like, honestly, as a kid, like an only child growing up in the 80s, like TV is my first love for sure. But, you know, with there's a reason we're on strike right now. And, you know.
That was the most politician answer, Almitra, and we'll accept it, though. We'll accept it.
Well, so in the same vein, I mean, you've done an episode of Glow. You've done a few episodes on The Jinx.
Actually,
ooh,
I'm so sorry to cut you
no.
off.
I will never shut up and cut me off.
My IMDb is a little misleading about the Glow thing.
Oh.
So I did season 4, the final season of Glow.
Oh, wow.
That was in the future, from where season 3 left off. We built a whole new show. We shot 12 days, I think, and then the pandemic hit.
Oh no!
No.
Yeah, it was a really big, brutal heartbreak when a few months down the line they ended up canceling us. So no one will ever see that work because we didn't shoot enough, you know, to make anything out of. And it was a bummer because they were some of the biggest, brightest, weirdest, most exciting sets I had a chance to make up to that point. And I was really, really, really super psyched for everyone to see it. I was like, I've made it, this iconic show. And I watched, you know, original Glow when I was a kid on Sunday mornings or Saturday mornings, and was such a lifelong fan. It was like a dream for me to be able to come on to this show. And it was a rare opportunity to come onto a 4th season of a show and not be taking over someone else's creative work. Like, we were building all new sets because we were at a different point in the story. So I wasn't coming onto a show that someone else had already designed and just sort of picking up where they left off. It was incredible. But then also to be this well-oiled, iconic machine by that point as well was like so wonderful for me. So I hope that one day there's some opportunity for people to see some of the work that we did on that somehow, but I don't know what that could be. But so I didn't do an episode of Glow. I did the final season that never completed.
The one that never was. Well, the good news is we can get some of it out talking to right here. So which is great because I had plenty of questions for Glow, and then I was like, she did one episode. Maybe I should pull some of these back. So I'm going to bring those back up. But my first question before that is, so is there a difference? So I was going to say, like, you did Glow, but then you also, it says you did The Jinx, that documentary on Robert Durst. Is there a difference, or what sort of differences are there between doing production design for a scripted show, a network show, a docuseries, a streaming show? What sort of differences do you see between those?
That's a big question. There's so many differences, but specifically between doing something like The Jinx and something like
a
Glow.
TV show or something. Yeah.
Like a scripted show.
So, yeah.
Well, I guess the docuseries is scripted.
My input on The Jinx was I came on just to do the LA unit, which was like half of 1 or 2 episodes because a good childhood friend of mine was producing it, and she knew that I was scrappy enough at the time to be able to jump on because, you know, documentaries never have all the resources that they need. So we were doing these like really scrappy recreations of things. I was driving a postal truck through Beverly Hills. I hand wrote all these little like the cadaver letters that he writes. Like I was like on, and I still find them every once in a while in a box. I think there's one in this box on my desk right now. It was one of the like most memorable and like bizarre jobs I've ever done. And I was a big Jarecki fan already before that. So I was super psyched that she called me for it. And I had no idea what the show was going to be. It was real creepy being there for some of the interviews and like being in the room for one of the interviews when someone found out that like had the realization that he was a murderer. So I think it was his friend's son. And it was like, oh, we're doing something really heavy. And that's not typically the case on, you know, a narrative half-hour comedy or something.
bit different than Glow and Dave.
Yeah. It was like, oh, these are real time consequences to what we are doing. And so there's something, you know, really exciting and intriguing about that kind of work. But that's the only time I've done something like that. And it was sort of a one-off situation that I'm so happy I was able to do. But that's my only experience in that.
Kind of glad to one and done that one, it sounds like.
I mean, I'm not like somebody who thrives on, you know, thrillers or true crime stuff. So it's just not really my vibe. I like to laugh, man.
Understandable. So did you have to like pour over like crime scene photos and stuff to help recreate some of this stuff?
I didn't do they did all the big recreations in New York.
Okay.
I just did the LA stuff. So it was basically like I built the inside of a post office box and I did a lot of little hand props and we did driving stuff and then some like just a couple of talking head sets. So it was very.
I'm like,
it was
super
very
glad
light.
to hear that was the level that you were like. Instead of being like, I actually killed people, and like it was. I just wanted to get like a feel of like what was going on.
We recreated this torso, but to get the real surprise look, I just stabbed the person. Yeah,
that's not really my vibe. But I did get to look through like photocopies of some evidence that somebody had somehow gotten from the Beverly Hills Police, like a folder of photocopies, and that's how I was able to make the recreation of the cadaver note and envelope.
Oh wow!
Oh my goodness!
And I have no idea how those came into anyone's possession, but that was a little creepy and like kind of being a very tiny part of that while things were happening in real time in real life with Robert Durst was also pretty intense and kind of creepy.
Just a bit.
Wow, that's insane. Okay, I want to bring up this because I brought it up at the beginning of this. The Invitation, this movie that came out, low-key movie, 2015.
I was about to ask a question on this one.
Go for it. Because
you want to just do a round of questions? Because mine's about the ending.
Okay, yeah, let me set it up and then we'll get to the round because people slept on this movie. This movie came out.
I slept on it. I feel bad about it.
Some people slept on it. Lots of cool people knew about it. Like right out the gate.
I had a good reason for sleeping on it.
I didn't sleep. I saw the trailer for it. I didn't get a chance to watch it in the movies, but I saw it as soon as it was like available. I'm like, man, I feel old even saying this, and it's not even that old. Like VOD, video on demand, right? Like, yeah. On like
you Redbox it.
Yeah,
I didn't Redbox it. I
think I did Redbox it. I Redboxed it. I did.
It was one of those movies when you had like when AT&T used to have their own like cable. They don't have it anymore. Their own cable service. They had like movies like you could rent for like whatever amount of money, and they had The Invitation on there. And I was like, oh, I was telling my girlfriend at the time, I'm like, oh, this movie looks incredible. She's like, I've never seen a trailer for it. So I showed her the trailer. She's like, why have I never heard of this movie? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe you're not cool. Person. Yeah, exactly. There's a reason we're not together. And so, so it's okay. We keep in contact. She's great. But I saw the trailer for this movie and it was incredible. The movie itself was incredible. And now every time I drive by somebody's house and they have a red light bulb on their porch on, I drive even faster past their house at this point. So walk me through what the experience was like and how much of an impact you brought to the table? That was like, okay, like we're about to call me a chili because we're about to spice this up a lot. You know what I mean? What was that experience like, Almitra?
Making The Invitation was one of the best experiences of my professional life. Karin Kusama is a brilliant director, and I adored working with her, and I was incredibly lucky to be called for that job. I had never designed anything really at that point. I had done some like shorts and music videos and just like really weird shit with my friend Dean Fleischer Camp.
So wait, was this your big break, like type thing?
Kinda, yeah.
Oh wow,
it was a good one to break out.
Yeah. I had art directed a couple of movies with my friend Elliot Hofstetter. I did a Roman Coppola movie called A Glimpse Inside the Mind of Charles Swam III. And it was the first movie that Charlie Sheen did after the whole Tiger's Blood issue.
Oh wow, okay.
And it was it's a really fucking cool looking movie for sure. It was really, really fun, and it was an incredible experience to make that movie and work with Elliot and with Roman. And then I also did Spring Breakers with Elliot, and then after that,
I saw that.
A production designer that I knew that was close with Karin, that had worked with her on one of her previous movies, wasn't able to do The Invitation, and he had seen my name in the credits for Spring Breakers and just assumed I wanted to be a production designer. So he threw my name in the hat, and I hadn't even talked to him in years, and I found out much later. I was like, how did you even like call me? And I found out obviously some other folks had like they called references, and people said that I would be a good person to consider, obviously. And I think Elliot also gave me a good recommendation, but I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. In retrospect, it was my first movie designing. I had been art directing for a few years, and I was art coordinating before that for like 6 or 7 years. But I had no idea what I was getting into. Wow. But that was a pretty good instance of like, this is going to sound not as positive as I want it to, but I knew it to be. This is kind of a like ignorance is bliss situation. Like you don't know what you don't know until you know. So like it went great, and I'm super happy with that movie. And I got to have a lot of input creatively on the work that I did. And that is not always the case, and now I know that because I've been doing it, for many years now. But I didn't realize how lucky I was on that. Like Karin treated me with so much respect, and so did her producers and the co-writers, Matt and Phil. They were amazing and super, super collaborative and kind to me. And the DP was a good friend of mine who I had recommended, so it was fun to work with a friend. But Karin let me go a little wild. I ran everything by her. She just liked the aesthetic that I chose, and we went with it. And I picked that location, the main location. That was kind of when I, early on, she and I and one of the producers scouted a bunch of houses, and there were a few that felt like they could totally work. But then when we saw this house, and it just had a creepy vibe when we walked in, it felt a little oppressive.
So perfect.
And it used to belong to Sage Stallone, Sylvester Stallone's son that passed away. And I believe he may have passed away in the house.
What?
It had a bit of, I think so. I might be mixing up my facts. I think I remember that. It really was. I was there one night. So like because this was my first movie, I was super down to be scrappy, obviously, and like give it my all because I had never done it before and I had a lot more to prove at the time. And we were in this single location for like 90% of the movie. We were also kind of working out of it as our production office and our actors' green rooms, which meant I had to sort of like do-si-do some of the sets. Like if we weren't shooting in one of the rooms, then we had to turn that into an actor green room or a crafty or something because they weren't renting any other houses on the block because we were that low budget. And this is one of those instances that is not always the case where like this movie was going to be worth working that hard. I knew that Karin was brilliant and that the script was amazing and the actors were killing it. And I knew it was going to be a great movie. So I never questioned like putting in that work. And I also felt really respected and like a part of making something. So it wasn't like a hard thing to do. But that being said, I was there a lot late at night by myself in the Hollywood Hills, surrounded by all of these like giant, what do you make gin out of? The tree?
Pines.
Nope. More specific than that. Juniper? There were these giant juniper trees that I had put all around the perimeter of the backyard so that it could feel more enclosed. And
I was like, it made it feel so close.
It really fucking worked. It was so scary. Like, I definitely ran out of there a couple of days and just scared myself so badly that I had to like slam the door behind me and like run to my car.
Did you have like some creepy shit happen? Was it a little ghostly?
I just scared myself. It's a big creepy house, and I was there by myself, and I knew that
you're making something creepy.
Sure
Yeah.
Died there.
Into it too much.
I just looked it up. Yeah, he did.
That was the house.
Yeah, okay, I thought it was right.
There's also a few more fun facts
about it. Jackie Stallone, his mom, Sylvester Stallone's mom, did all the interior decorating of this house. So there was like a really dark, like all of the tile in the bathrooms was like chocolate brown and like iridescent. It was like a real intense look. So that was my first time trying to figure out how to deal with a location not being exactly what we needed it to be. There was like a flashback scene where Will, played by Logan Marshall Green, and his ex-wife Tammy Blanchard, is the actress. They were in the bathtub having it was like a flashback scene of when they were happier together, and it could not be in a chocolate brown bathtub. So I figured out how to do like a temporary glazing of the tub to make it white for the scene, and then we could peel it off after. Obviously wasn't as easy as we hoped it would be. It was a bit of a nightmare to remove it, but we still did it.
I'm sorry, the bathtub was brown?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That just makes me smile. I don't know why.
It was a real choice. I mean, Jackie Stallone, she had some taste.
She's got some opinions.
Jeff, drop a question because we're going round table.
So
for this
my
one.
question about the invitation was actually, I mean, it feels like it's a very, like the lighting is very subdued in the film. I mean, even when they're in fully bright rooms, it's dimmer. Were there challenges that came from filming in such a location where, like, I mean, you've got these nice bright lights coming on, making sure everything's properly lit, whereas opposed to this?
Well, this movie, because it was like taking a lot of inspiration from 70s paranoia dinner party films, which I didn't know until I made the invitation that was a genre, but it is, and it's pretty cool. We were using a lot of like practical lighting. That was part of the Karin and Bobby, our DP, was part of our plan. So I worked really closely with Bobby's gaffer so that we could light around the exterior of the house with like little directional like exterior lights that look like they were part of the landscape and not a movie light. We did a lot of that kind of stuff. And the challenge is when you're shooting in a practical location like that and you're shooting the kind of action we were doing too, and like that many actors being a dinner party, you have to be really nimble. So that was part of the reason that I think that was the choice for the lighting, so that there was no hindrance as far as what they could shoot at any time.
That makes sense.
Obviously it wasn't like that all the time every day, but we tried to keep in mind how to make the set and the actors and the movie look good in one space and also get it shot and done in, I think it was like, maybe like a 25-day shoot, maybe less.
Whoa.
And we were mostly in that one house, which of course had its challenges because it was up in the Hollywood Hills where you can't park or anything. So like every day there was like a crew van that would go down the hill and back, and it would take like 40 minutes because of traffic on Mulholland, which, I don't live in LA anymore, so I never have to say that again. But traffic on Mulholland.
Oh man. And then just a comment on the film. All the actors were absolutely phenomenal, but I was especially impressed with Jay Larson being a comedian pulling out that dramatic role.
Yeah. Karen is so I really always like her casting choices in her shows, and that was definitely like a bit of a wild card compared to some of the other actors, but he was so lovely on set. He was so funny, and it was like, you know, the levity that was needed in that group of actors. He was fucking awesome.
I love him. He's one of my favorite comedians. Anyway.
Cool.
Okay.
Producer T, I know you had a question.
Yeah, so when we get to like just that last shot, that moment where we think they're just alone, it's just one crazy person who got influenced into the cult, and they light that red lantern, and then as it pans out and we're looking at the rest of the Hollywood Hills, we see all the different red lanterns. How much of that was practical versus CGI? Or just
the only thing that was practical were the ones in our yard, in our hero yard. The rest was, and that at the time was like a really big VFX job. You know, I remember it was something that they talked about for a long time, like on the producer side of like how they were going to afford to do that, and all the, you know, sacrifices we had to make in other places so that they could protect the money to keep that shot. And that's actually the one thing that this is the kind of movie that I probably wouldn't have watched because I'm too much of a baby for scary movies. Like, they really scare the shit out of me and stay with me, especially when it's something that like actually could happen, you know?
Don't watch Eden Lake. Messed me up bad today.
Okay, good to know. But this movie was such a fucking banger, and everybody that saw it like loved it and was, you know, blown away by the ending. And the projects that I do, because I know what's going to happen, because I read the script, because I help make it, I build the world, it's never a surprise to me, but it usually like isn't a big deal because it's not a gotcha or a mystery or anything like that. But with The Invitation, like, I've always been a little envious that I didn't get to have that experience that other viewers got.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna wait until I'm older and my like
starting to go
has my memory is gone, and I'll watch it and be surprised and be so excited and proud of myself all over again.
That's awesome. I buy posters from a company down here in Austin called Mondo, and there's a post I bought their Quiet Place poster specifically because it looks like that end scene in The Invitation. It's just hills with all these little red lights.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought the Mondo did an album, a record for The Invitation. Yep. I got that.
Yeah, they did that.
Very cool.
Oh wow.
Super cool.
Well, because I was looking at the trailer. I hadn't seen this movie in a while, but I watched the trailer and it was a Draft House film. Like they had some sort of
they did distribution.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, after production. Yeah.
And Draft House and Mondo are partners.
Right. Yeah. That much.
Yes.
Oh,
still upset about it.
I know a lot about the Alamo Draft House. I was just in Tim League's basement.
Look, he flex, no bad.
Yeah, dude, it's a cellar. It's like he has this whole wine cellar / bomb shelter type thing going on.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I have a little wine shelter in my new house.
Yeah.
Ooh.
What's your favorite type of wine, Almitra?
Oh, I'm so basic. I like a natural, organic, light, chilled red. It's my jam.
Okay. I thought you were gonna go rosé.
I thought she was gonna say rosé.
I was gonna kick you off the show for sure. For sure. Yeah, I'm a red blend. I also like a good like Cab Sav. You know, maybe a little.
Noted.
Yeah, so for people out there that want to buy me wine, it's Christmas coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Pinot Noir.
Yeah, I like whiskey.
I'm a whiskey guy too. I'm a man of many things.
I do not like whiskey.
I'll slap you in the face if I have whiskey.
No, I went all the way to the Jameson factory and did the whole tour at Jameson, and I was like, it still just tastes like rubbing alcohol to me.
Yeah, it's Jameson. Get better than Jameson.
I've done Johnny Walker too, and I was just like, oh wow, fancier rubbing alcohol.
I will not have you bashing whiskeys on my show, first of all.
Now I do the Japanese whiskeys.
Japanese whiskeys are incredible.
Those are real
rubbing
good.
Alcohol.
Yeah, it's so fantastic.
Those are incredible.
All right, so switching gears a little bit off of
let's talk about alcohol. Let's talk about alcohol.
All right. So I was wondering, what's like the most random thing you've had trouble finding that you needed for a shoot? Like something that comes to mind for me is like in the movie Frailty, they were only able to find one Ham's beer can. So literally they had to reuse it the entire time. And every time he opened a new one, they just like sound affected like the pop opening in it. Is there anything that you have like that?
Yeah, I feel like something like that happens every job, but the one that comes to mind is Dave related.
Yes.
For season 2 with the incredible Gina Hecht.
Oh,
She's
love
We
it.
interviewed.
We've had her on the show.
Big
She's
fans.
incredible.
Friend of
great.
the show.
Sweetest one.
Yeah,
So funny.
she's pretty great. She's so funny. She is so funny on the show.
Yeah.
And there was the scene where there's a little physical comedy with her character at the mall.
Oh, the
She's
chair.
on
When she flips.
yeah, and that's like a
Oh.
really expensive I think it's Vitra who makes it. It's a really expensive and kind of hard to get chair. They sell it at like the MoMA design store or something. And it was in the script. And so this is the thing. This actually caused me to go talk to a graduate school class of up and coming television writers and tell them to be very thoughtful about the things they put in the script because we will take them so literally. So this one, we couldn't find that spinning top chair. That was what I think it was Love. One of our writer producers had put it in the script, and I didn't question it. We just went to work, and I figured it would be easy enough to find because I see them outside of the juice bars in Silver Lake, And I was like, maybe we could just rent them from them. And I thought maybe one of the like higher end prop houses would have them to rent, And so we designed the whole set, the whole like the mini set inside the mall with those in mind. And my poor decorator, also this is the height of the pandemic. It was a really brutal like time period to be working.
Gina was actually telling us about that day when we interviewed her.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a fun day, and it was a really weird and wild day, and so much crazy shit happened at that mall. But we couldn't find them in the end. I mean, we found them in the very end, but for like weeks, because I knew it was something that was gonna like take some time to get. My decorator and her team were like trying everywhere, everyone, everything, and like they were coming up empty. And I finally went back to Dave and was like, we can't find these chairs. Like, is there a backup? Like, what's the like, impetus for this? Like, why does it have to be this chair? Is there something else? I was talking to Tony, the director, Tony Asenda, and Dave was like, I don't even know what the fuck that is. He was like, Love wrote that. And I was like, we spent all this time like trying to get it. And then he was like, I'm sure we can figure something else out. And then I went to Love, and Love was like, yeah, I didn't really know what it was either. And I was like, oh, very, very cool, guys. No problem. Got it. Thank you so much. But then we ended up finding them, and they actually were epic, and it was so funny. And I'm glad we were able to find them. But there was like a little bit of a roller coaster of like, it's got to be this because it's very specifically called out in the script. And then everybody was like, no, I don't even know where that came from. It just seemed like a cool thing or whatever.
Seems funny, yeah.
So, yeah.
That's awesome.
So as you were explaining this to the college students, were you like, please just specify or don't specify? Like, don't. Well,
I was like, just be intentional about it. If it's super important to the story, like obviously, yes. But like, if you don't give a shit and you're just like pulling things out of the air, like just know that like we're going to be very literal, and it does impact a budget and all the other things that come into play when you're making a show. And not that happened regularly on Dave or any show I've worked on, because these are professional writers that usually do take all of those things into account, especially in like the shooting drafts of the episodes. The first drafts are always like very aspirational, and then we bring them down a bit. We tailor some of them to locations that we find. Like that's one of my favorite parts of the job, is like when I get a script that I know isn't exactly shootable for scheduling reasons or whatever, or budgetary or all the things. I love going out with my location manager and getting really creative and trying to find something that is like somehow evocative of what was on the original page, and then bringing in like a new exciting option when the director or the showrunner, whomever, like really goes for it, it's always really fun to be able to pull that off, because that's all I'm ever trying to do is serve the story and also make it achievable for us all.
Right. Absolutely.
Very fair.
Almitra, what would you say, like, when you get a job and they're like, hey, we want you for this, where do you find like all, and I imagine maybe everywhere, but like where for you do you specifically find like places of like inspiration? Like what for you is like, oh, this puts me in my happy zone to where I'm like, oh, it's like I'm downloaded like all the Matrix code and now I can like put out a great production design for you. What's inspiring for you once you get put in that position?
Well, I'm gonna see what you guys think of me after I tell you this, but usually the first thing I do when I want to start the process of designing a show, whether it's before I make mood boards for my initial meeting with a director before I actually get the job, or once I actually get the job and I'm ready to like start the research and development period, I go for a float in a sensory deprivation tank.
Ooh.
And I mean, I do that fairly regularly already, but I always do it at the beginning of a design process because it helps me clear my brain a little bit. It's really hard to turn my brain off and focus on anything. So the way that I have found that to assist in that like sort of change is to do that, and it's the closest I've ever come to kind of like having a clear mind, because literally everything is dark and I'm just floating and there's no light, there's no sound, and every single time I end up finding something in like the recesses of my brain, like something I did when I was a teenager, or like something I saw once when I was traveling, and it'll like be the thing that sparks the beginning of the sort of snowball of designing, or like, you know, it's kind of like breaking the seal a little bit for me.
I really like that because I'm a huge fan of Rick Rubin, and I heard him talking on Rogan's podcast last year, and he talked about how he's not a producer, he's a reducer. And with that approach, it's actually helped my life substantially. I'll take time to just like meditate for like 30 minutes quiet, just put a blindfold on or something. And I haven't done the sensory deprivation thing, but it's big here in Austin. A lot of people do it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so like, it's not as far out because we keep Austin weird. It's not as far out as an idea for some people. It's not all woo woo. But I'm a fan of that approach. I think reducing things and not trying to introduce all these things so that way your brain goes on like this you know, hyper mode, but just taking away everything, stripping it down, and then being like, oh, this is what we're left with, and this is what it makes me feel like, or this is what it makes me, this one thought is what it makes me think of. I think
it's like clearing the path.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I love that.
Oh, thanks. You just reminded me of my favorite episode of Dave is the Rick Rubin.
Oh yeah.
That's my favorite episode.
Also with the sensory deprivation tank.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. God. That
Dave was real psyched to send me that script because
was he?
Yeah. Well, because he knew that I floated, and so he was.
That's too awesome.
That's hilarious. How was it seeing Dave with no hair, like a little moleless rat?
Oh my God. Well, so I couldn't actually be there on that shoot day because of scheduling. No. Actually, our show, Dave had, I think at the time it was like a COVID push. Our schedule pushed a few weeks. And so I had to go start quarantine. Remember quarantine? For my next show in Toronto. So I was working remotely for Dave because it was like our last 5 days of shooting, and everything, all the work was for the most part in place, and I could do the rest remotely with my art director and decorator on the ground and the rest of our team, obviously. But I am still pretty bummed that I missed that in person. Watching the dailies was shocking. And I did get, I got set photos and fitting photos from the costume designer. So I knew in theory what it was going to look like. And I knew, I'm a part of the decision making or the creative process for all the little weird things that we did in that scene. but you know, the thing that's always a little bit of like a very cool mystery for me as the designer is seeing the final edit. Like that's something that the longer I do this job, the more that's a thing that I try to keep in mind more and more, you know, that comes with experience and everything. And so I do really like being able to get, like, I get the rough cuts for a lot of our shows now. So I get to see them along the process, and that's really awesome. But with Dave, I just got dailies and I saw the show when it aired. And it was fucking shocking. It was shocking. But
you know, you're not the biggest fan.
Really.
You're not the biggest fan of horror movies. I don't know if seeing that in person would have been the best for your dreams or nightmares at that point. Just saying.
No,
might have
sure,
influenced the dreaming world in ways you wouldn't have enjoyed.
I dreamed of you know, hairless Dave for at least a week after that. And
ooh,
yeah,
that's a term I didn't really need in my vocabulary. Hairless Dave.
Yeah, that's what it is. Jeff, producer T, any final questions as we sort of round this out, man? It's been great.
Terry, you want to go first?
Yeah. Since now that you have your house in Virginia, how's that gonna start affecting you with jobs in LA or New York, or you know, where they're filming major things at? Will that just like make your travel schedule go up?
Well, part of the inspiration to move back here was because I haven't worked in LA in almost 2 years. I've been in New York and Toronto, and then the strike. So I don't have to live in LA to work. And you know, I met on a show today that's going to potentially shoot in New Jersey. And if they hire me for that, they'll bring me up there and put me up, and I'll work there. And it's only a 6-hour drive from Richmond, so I can get myself there pretty easily. I've done that Northeast corridor drive like 100 million times. So I'm really happy to be home back on the East Coast.
Nice. Love it.
So the question I like to ask is, what's like a movie or a TV show in the past that you didn't work on that like would have been your dream to have worked on?
Shit.
I know. It's a big question.
Let me think. Something recent. I can tell you a really funny story that is maybe it's not that funny, and maybe it's not kosher.
Hey, there's no wrong answers here.
That's right.
This is your interview. Take it whatever direction you want.
So a couple of years ago, I was in like a really dark place, as many people were. You know, and I got called for a show at a time where I couldn't imagine like giving a shit about anything for anybody ever again.
Oh, wow.
But the script was so good, and I really liked the person who sent it to me, and I knew him from Dave. And I loved the script. I took the meeting with him and one of the producers, and I don't know what the fuck came out of my mouth. I was not myself. I didn't know what I was talking about. I think it was the first like meeting I'd had in probably like well over a year. And remember, this was still pretty deep pandemic days. Like I was not myself. I completely tanked it. It was such a weird interview, when I also kind of went in thinking maybe I had it in the bag because I knew that they liked my work from Dave and High Fidelity. And that was part of why we were meeting. He called me out. I wrote him afterwards. I was like, I am so sorry. This is not me. This is not a good time. I clearly shouldn't be working, and I'm really sorry about that.
Not sure if you're aware what's going on in the world,
weird meeting.
Yeah.
And he was so sweet. He was like, I get it. Don't worry about it. Whatever, you know. Fast forward a year or whatever, and the show comes out, and it's fucking perfect, and I love everything about it. And the designer who did it like made her mark. Like it is her work, and it is gorgeous, and I wouldn't have done anything like that probably. But I am so envious of the show Beef.
Oh,
wow. Okay.
But I would have blown up my life and probably like not done a very good job, and maybe would have been fired if I had been offered that job, because I wasn't in a good place to make a good show with anybody at that time.
Can you imagine being in that headspace and going for a deprivation tank? That could have gone bad.
Facts.
I can't imagine being in that headspace and then doing that show, because I only read the first 2 scripts.
Right.
I didn't know how dark it was gonna get. Like that would have not been great for me personally, probably. But it's such a beautiful show, and they did so much aesthetically, and like those sets are incredible. And it's rare that like a half-hour comedy gets to.
It's your hands. It's something with your hands. Can you do this again?
No,
it's not.
It is.
But before, when I think I waved, and it was ballooned.
Oh,
I don't know.
God. I don't know what. I don't know how I get that, but I want that.
No, it's only hers.
I'll
it's
let
only
you know.
Hers.
Well, it was really good timing. It was needed to break up the heaviness.
I was about to cry too. Yeah, so I'm glad some little confetti popped over.
No, I was just saying it's rare that like a half-hour comedy, especially a first season, gets to also have the actual world around it be such an important part of the story. Because a lot of times like comedies prioritize the laughs and not the whole package of the filmmaking and the world building. So that's one of the reasons that is a show that I am so envious of and think is so beautiful and would have loved to have had the opportunity to do, but just not when they were making it.
Yeah, very fair, very fair.
Fair point. Well, Almitra, I want to thank you for coming on, and hopefully we didn't bombard you with too many questions. Of course.
No, it was awesome.
Always at the end, just feel free to take over the show right now and let people know whatever you're working on, if you can, or what what you got going, or where they can find you if they want to reach out to you, if they're trying to be production designer, or if they just want to see like what you're working on the social mediums.
Well, I'm not that interesting on the internet, but my Instagram's Hey Almitra. If anyone ever wants to hire me, I'm at UTA. And I haven't updated my website in like 5 years.
Very nice.
So don't go there. And this was just like a really fun thing to do, since we're finally, it seems like we're in the final stretch of these last 5 months of strikes. I think things are going to pick up in the next few weeks if we're being optimistic about SAG being back to the table. So this is like a really cool thing for me to be able to do and talk about all the past work and just like remember why filmmaking is so fun and I love doing it. And so thank you guys for that opportunity.
Of course.
Oh, and also I think we're doing this for International Production Designers Week, aren't we?
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
You are our first interview for it.
I would really like to shout that out. Part of the Production Designers Collective. Everybody should check out the website for Production Designers Collective. It's this incredible collective started by 2 amazing production designers, Kalina Ivanoff and Imbal Weinberg, and they are amazing. And they saw a need for some sort of like community and representation for the craft of production design, and they 5-6 years ago started this process of making this group, and it's grown to thousands of people, I believe, all over the world. And last year, almost exactly a year ago, we had our first gathering and we went to Greece. It was 260 of us, just every tier of production designer, all on one little island in Greece. And it was amazing. I got to meet some of our heroes. I got to hang out with a bunch of my peers. I got to speak to a bunch of production design students, and like it was so wonderful. And so this year they're doing a lot of different events all over the world. Some of them will be virtually, and it's the same week as the gathering was last year. So every other year there'll be a gathering, and every other year there'll be this International Production Design Week, and that's why we're talking. So thank you so much for being a part of that with us too.
Of course, we're happy that to be a part of it and just like interview people and let them have a good time on our show. I think that's exactly what this platform's for. We're not serious about anything. We're not broadcasters. We just want to make people laugh and ask some questions.
TV and film nerds, and we love to learn every aspect of a show. So having production designers come on and actually tell us all the nerdy things we've been dying to hear about is just a blessing for us.
That's right.
That's
for
so
sure.
Cool.
For sure.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, let's start rounding this panel out of here. Jeff, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
Well, first, I also want to say thank you, Almitra, and I'll say the same thing to you that I said to Sarah. I could ask you questions all day. This has been such a fun interview, so thank you for coming on. You can always try, and for me, you can try Skyping me at Don Cheadle's driveway at littledickie2.com. It's
cool.
It's because of the
hackers.
Yeah. You can find Jeff Madel on Facebook, at MadelJeff on Instagram, and you can find me on the YouTube channels Nerds at Night and 9NerdYards.
That's right. Producer T. It's been a while since people have seen your shining face, but where can they find you?
I've been busy. Well, you can see my newest video that's on Nerds at Night and soon to be 9NerdYards, because we're just gonna say, oh well, it got copyrighted, can't monetize it once again. But it's a breakdown of my favorite show, Top Boy, the first season, and that's gonna be 1 out of 5 videos. So I'm gonna do one for every season. And of course, you can also find me at T-Pins, where you can, of course, get our 9NerdYards merchandise, such as our Atlanta pins that I designed. So that's it. That's where you can find me.
Love it.
Hey, Blake.
Hey, Jeff.
Where can people find you?
Thought you'd never ask. You can find me, Money Blake, whether Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat, or on the TikToks. I do it with the kids. I try to figure out what's going on in the wonderful world of life. I got Virginia right, so you know what? What else might be right on TikTok? I don't know. You can follow my other podcast, Unfiltered Bachelor, on your favorite podcast platform, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere podcasts are. That's where that show is. Or you can find me here on 9NerdYards. We just broke down Ahsoka last night. And you can find us on Nerds at Night. Go ahead and follow that channel as well. We're gonna have a lot of stuff from Fantastic Fest that producer T and Kirsten did. So we're just happy for all that. We want to thank everybody for tuning in, especially the people that were with us along the way for Dave, because this is like a nice little treat for y'all. Like you get to get a little behind the scenes, you know what I mean? So we want to thank everybody out there for tuning in, whether it's morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time it is. We do appreciate you. And until the next time, we'll see you. Peace.